Hi guys, welcome to my channel. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Bomika Lupindo. I am a clinical psychologist by profession and I'm currently completing my community service. And those of you who are returning to the channel, welcome. Thank you for your continued support. So I've been getting a lot of questions with regards to what I'm doing now, what's it been like. So I'm just gonna share a bit of information about that. So let's get right into it. So right now I'm currently completing my community service and I am placed at a Department of Correctional Services facility. So just to backtrack a bit regarding how you end up at community service, after your master's, you have to apply for your internship, as we've previously spoken about. And then after internship, for some psychology categories or registrations rather, you need to do your community service before you can become an independent practitioner. So I know specifically for clinical psychology, you have to do community service, whereas with educational psychology and I think also counseling psychology, you don't have to do community service. So how community service works is that during your internship here, usually it's around May when the applications for community service open, and it goes through 2 stages. So there's like a central system that you apply through, and it's called ICPS, which is Internship and Community Service Program. And it has 2 stages in your application process. So the first stage, when it opens in May, it's for you to update your details and to see whether or not you are on the system, so that when applications open, you're able to apply. So that's the first stage you need to get through. If your name is not on the system or your details are not on the system, you have to register yourself by logging a ticket, and it's quite an entire process on its own. And then after that, the system will close and then reopen again, where you get to apply for community service. So how community service applications work is that you will have 5 options that you can choose placement at. So it's generally places across South Africa, and the places that are on the system are usually placements that require that service and don't necessarily have a lot of people going there. So you'll find it's like rural areas or facilities like correctional facilities where people generally don't go there, or it's facilities that require quite a lot of resources, and by extension they require quite a lot of input from like whatever professionals are in that field. You need to apply through that system, and you have to choose 5 places. So one is a metropolitan area. You can only choose one metropolitan area, which means that you can only choose like in a city kind of setting, one placement. So be it's a tertiary hospital, because that's where usually like more your academic hospitals and your tertiary institutions are based in metropolitan areas. So you can only choose one from there. And after the metropolitan area, there are 2 other categories of placements that you can choose from. So the one is more of, it's still within the city, but it's just outside the metropolitan area. And the 3rd category you can choose from is more of your rural areas. And then they'll specify that you can only choose one metropolitan area, and I think 2 priority 2 placements, which is just outside the city or within the city but not in the metropolitan area, and also like 2 from your priority 3 placements, which are more in your rural kind of areas. So when I applied in Cape Town at a tertiary institution. I applied at a hospital in the West Rand. I applied at 3 hospitals in KZN, like spread across KZN. And when I got placed at a place that I didn't apply for. So after like applications are closed and the results come out, there's also an opportunity to exchange with other people. So you can choose to find someone that is willing to switch placements with you. And if that doesn't work out, there's also a process of appealing your placement. So saying the reasons why you don't want the placement that you've been placed at. So for example, if it's a place that you didn't apply for, or there are certain concerns that you have around the place, all of those stuff. So with me, when I found out I've been placed at the Department of Correctional Services, I was actually excited because before I applied for ComServe, like I've always wanted to work in that kind of setting, but people actually discouraged me from going into that kind of setting because of the kind of people that you work with, but also just the environment itself. Because of that, I didn't apply for ComServe at a correctional facility. So when I found out I actually got placed there, I was kind of excited, but at the same time I was anxious because I didn't know what to expect. So I decided to contact someone that actually worked at the facility, and she also raised certain concerns about safety within the facility, having a shortage of staff, and those kind of things were real concerns that they had as people working there. But overall, she was just happy with being there. So I decided, actually, I'm gonna appeal. And I went through the process, explained that it's a place that I didn't apply for, and also the security concerns that were there. But unfortunately with me, my appeal was unsuccessful, which was weird because like a lot of people who appealed, their appeals were actually successful. So nonetheless, I took the placement because it was either I take the placement or I wait for the next cycle to apply, which would mean I would only start working like around June. And I wasn't willing to wait that long to get a ComServe placement, and I didn't know if I'd get a placement that was worse than the one that I got now. So I'm currently placed at correctional facility in Gauteng, and it's been quite an interesting experience. So just starting with the kind of work that I do within the placement. So I do psychological assessment for diagnostic purposes and also thinking about interventions. So for example, if an offender presents with certain kind of problems and we need to see what exactly they need. So do they need a referral to the psychiatrist? Do they need other psychological input? Or do they need something else completely different? Which is generally the stuff that we do as psychologists. Also do individual and group therapy with the offenders. I also do risk assessments. So if an offender is going to be released on parole, they want you to do a risk assessment to determine how much of a risk they still pose for reoffending. And also in relation to the kind of risk assessments that we do, I've had a referral of actually having someone to assess their criminogenic needs and to see what kind of interventions they would need to reduce the amount of risk they have before they actually get released for parole. So you need to do that assessment. We also do VOD assessment, so it's a victim offender dialogue. So we do the assessment to determine whether or not the offender is ready to engage in that process or they still need more rehabilitation. So what is it exactly that they need? And I also do things like sentence plans. So when an offender has recently been sentenced and they're going to start their incarceration, we need to do an assessment to see whether or not this person presents with any psychological problems and think about whether they need to be seen for psychotherapy during their rehabilitation within the facility. So those are just some of the stuff that we do. It's things that I really enjoy doing. It's things that I find quite interesting. I really enjoy the risk assessments because it just gets you to think about some of the risk and protective factors that the person has, what we need to do to try and mitigate that. But I think the hardest thing about that is that even though like you have these tools and these instruments that you use to try and help you determine the amount of risk, you can never be really certain about someone's behavior. So someone that we might find based on the assessment are high risk, they might turn out to not be a high risk when they do get outside, in the sense that they might not reoffend when they do get outside because of other factors like having support, and other protective factors that they then get exposed to when they're outside. And then on the other hand, other people that we perceive as being less of a risk, they might get outside and get exposed to destabilizing kind of situations. So situations that put them at risk of reoffending. So those kind of destabilizing situations can then result in the person reoffending. So it's interesting work to do, but at the same time, I feel there's quite a lot of responsibility that's attached to it and a lot that you need to consider. But overall, I do enjoy the work that I do. I also enjoy the kind of people that I work with. It's really quite interesting work. It's different from the work that you would generally be exposed to, and the population that you work with, and the kind of content that you get into. So if you know that you're someone that's not able to sit through listening to and asking about a person's crime in quite explicit detail, and just working with people that have committed those kind of crimes, including the personalities that they present with, that could be quite a challenge for you. And that's something to seriously consider when you're considering whether or not you would like to do ComServe in that kind of setting. I've always been someone that's interested in forensics, so I really, really, really love the work. And I feel like something else that's also quite an advantage about working in a correctional facility is that you actually have a bit more time compared to if you work in a health system or if you work in a psychiatric facility for your ComServe. And I found that the workload there is a lot more manageable, which is great, especially if you're coming right out of master's and internship, which have both been intense. So just having that sense of a breather. And you also get to explore things. So improve your knowledge, your understanding in certain areas, or continue with your study. So those kind of things are a great advantage about working in a correctional facility. So one thing I don't like about where I'm working or the kind of environment that I work in, it's quite rigid, it's quite stern. At times it feels like you're also an offender, and there's that constant thing of you'll get charged if you overstep a certain line, and there's no room to try and negotiate things or think about things or doing things differently. So those kind of things I don't like. Also, the environment that I'm currently working in, I feel like it's physically and also psychologically unsafe. So there's like obvious risk, like you're working with offenders, anything can happen at any point, but also like security issues within the facility, which were raised to me before I even went there. So those kind of things are things that are there and they're imminent. And more in psychological terms, just the rigidity of the system, and the superiors within the facility that just make working in that kind of environment a bit more difficult. So those are just some of the things that I don't enjoy about working within the facility. And also because you're working with people who are incarcerated, like those people are there for a very long time. So if you're seeing someone and maybe they're at the beginning of their sentence or they're a couple of years into their sentence, you do the work and you might see the progress, but there's like so many opportunities for relapse because of continuously being exposed to that kind of environment. And also you don't see like a sense of progression because they are within the facility. So for example, you might be working with someone who has like really bad substance use, or they have like problems with their families. You might help them in terms of reestablishing those relationships, working on those relationships, or reducing their substance use, but continuously being exposed to that kind of environment that kind of counters the work that you're trying to do, and also the culture that they're exposed to within the correctional facility just makes it a little bit discouraging and requires quite a lot from you and also your patients that you see within the facility. So yeah, I think I'll speak a lot more about specifically my experience in the facility that I work in at the end of my community service, because I feel like there's quite a lot to share. But overall, would I work in forensics after this? Yeah, I definitely would. I really enjoy forensics. I really enjoy the kind of work that we do, the kind of people that we work with, and it's something that I've always been passionate about. I think it's more other external factors that make the work that's already difficult even more difficult. So that's where I'm at, and that's how things have been. I think just as a final kind of share is, especially for people considering going to that kind of setting, that it's quite important for you to have support. I feel like I've been stressing this in all levels of psychology, but ComServe is different. It's very isolating in the sense that you're probably the only ComServe in your placement, and it's not like internship where you have people going through the same struggles you are going through and you guys can support each other in the process. It's very isolating. You have to kind of figure things out yourself. It's not as supportive as I was anticipating it to be, and I think a lot of people are having the same kind of experience. So having your own personal support, family, friends, other kind of support that you can get, personal therapy, getting your own supervision, be it's group supervision or more of one-on-one supervision with a supervisor that you find yourself. Those kind of support structures that you put in yourself can be very helpful, because it's very exhausting. I guess it's just a year that you need to get through in order for you to practice independently. But yeah, and I think we can just end there. But thank you so much for tuning in once again. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe to my channel and hit that notification button so you don't miss out on anything. And I always love hearing from you guys, how you find the videos and anything else that you would like me to do videos on in the future. Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing from you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys next time. Mwah.